Hey, team players, and welcome back. To hit a quick scheduling note so you guys can understand this here, we're doing a dual broadcast. We're trying out a new feature here that's offered through StreamYard, the site in which we go live, in which we have the phone version, which is the vertical, and the traditional version in which we go on. It does not matter which one you put your questions into, we will still get your questions and make them happen. As you know, local football flavor, we're going to answer your questions, go through all your stuff, and be able to make this a championship grade performance. That's what we're doing today and every day. Let's do it. Back, guys. This is an amazing day here, and trying to do it all and make this magic happen for you guys. Trying to do a little bit of different editing, a little bit of different things happening here, and it's a new formula that is outlined throughout it. And you're going to see me testing things, going back and forth, trying to see how to make it work. And we're going to see this learning experience if you're on the vertical together. The horizontal one is the standard show that you guys always get. And as you know, make sure you guys click like and subscribe. Does a big favor for all of us. You guys see the pinned comment. As always, you feel some love, share with us via PayPal. So, Bob, where do you want to start with today, Zach? Because I got all kinds of different thoughts and answers.
I'll start right here and just say that Jonathan Taylor is a dog. I mean, we all kind of knew he was a dog, and back in the early stages of the season, some of our viewers were potentially trading Taylor into Bijan, and that was kind of like both players are elite. Which one would you rather have? Touchdown equity kind of thing. But I got to say, we haven't seen a football season like this from a player of Jonathan Taylor's caliber in a very, very, very long time. Mm-hmm. Just looking at things back in week 3, I think it was, I said, if you can see Jonathan Taylor getting into 15 touchdowns, that's a fantastic season. He's at 15 touchdowns right now in terms of rushing touchdowns and then 2 receiving touchdowns. So a total of 17 touchdowns. He is probably going with a bye this week, but going into the rest of the season, there's a good chance that he is going to eclipse Raheem Mostert's touchdown number. But the thing that I think is crazy, right, is that he is first in carries, first in yards, first in touchdowns, averaging only 6 yards, but he has that elite. And I think at the beginning of the season, everybody forgot about this, which allowed him to slip into the second round. Like I was just saying, at the turn in my one home league, right, I took a chance on Chase Brown and Bucky. That obviously hasn't turned out. And the reason JT's slipping so far in the second and third round in some leagues was just because people were unsure about Daniel Jones. People were unsure about how this offense would perform, how this defense would perform. And, it's the fool me once kind of mentality where he had a bad week 1. I remember coming on a show week 1. Remember, Joe? Where you and I were talking about, we faced off in that matchup and Daniel Jones stole the rushing touchdowns. And I said, well, if that's going to be how the year is, that's going to suck for JT owners. But that is not how the year has turned out whatsoever.
Well, JT's scoring long ones in his defense.
Yeah. And it's good kind of recognition that this league can change so much. There's so much variance within this league. And just as another example, right, about variance is that last week, Rome Odunze, 0 points, barely any targets. This week, a 20-pointer. So, you can definitely, there are the ebbs and flows of the league, but
I'd stand by. Jackson Dart doesn't get hurt. The Giants win that game easily.
It seems like right now that what is inevitable, Jonathan Taylor is inevitable. And what's also inevitable is that Dan Campbell will crush your soul after losing. He does not like to lose.
He took over play control just so he could run the ball more down their face.
And then, just speaking about some other things that happened in the league before we get to any questions or comments here, New Orleans ended up winning that game over Carolina. Juwan Johnson was flexing on them. Stafford is still going hard. One of his best seasons yet. Seattle again, with another phenomenal defensive performance with 2 defensive touchdowns, which is crazy. And the funniest stat I think I saw in the week where I think it was like around halftime. Now, I don't know if my numbers were correct there, but around halftime or at the end of the first quarter, the Jets were winning that game 14-7 with 2 total yards of offense.
Yeah, that's about right.
And so when we look at things and we talk about things that happened last week, we talked a lot about Breece Hall and things of that nature. That was one of the outcomes that could have happened, was that because the passing offense is so putrid, they're just going to give the ball to Breece Hall all the time, and they did.
Yes, they did.
Two good rushing performances in that game, Quinshon Judkins and Breece Hall. Problem is, Judkins didn't get the touchdown, didn't get the long reception at all either. But the league, there's so much parity in the league on a week-to-week basis. Houston coming back and winning that game, for example. The champion, Davis Mills, as we said last week, just a wild ride. And I think that we'll have to keep our eyes on that going forward in this season. So let's get to some of the questions here in the comments. We appreciate all the questions, guys, and we will get to all of them. So CC, you asked here, I'm looking to consolidate one last time. I want to sell Breece immediately off this second boom game. You think him and Pickens gets Gibbs or Jamar? I don't think it gets Gibbs, because the Gibbs ebb and flow is kind of rocky to be in right now, because a lot of people, they're not going to sell Gibbs for this price. I'll tell you that, because Gibbs' ceiling is so high. We saw it this week. Like, I was in a matchup in my one home league, and one of my league mates goes, "You're projected to win." I said, "Yeah, but he's got Gibbs and McConkey and Laporta left, and there's a likelihood that Gibbs gets 40 points," and he basically got 40 points. So Gibbs is one of those players that you can buy, but you're going to have to buy him at a price that you probably don't want to pay right now because of that boom week. I think that Breece Hall and Pickens, though, if you added another piece, you might be able to get into a conversation about Jamar. But I
think you're more likely to pull a receiver than a back with this one, because people are going to see Pickens as a higher value asset than Breece. And in general, it's better to go with the best on best, since you're doing a 2-for-1 with 2 receivers, and then Breece be the push you over the top. I don't think you're necessarily getting Jamar, but you might be able to get J-Jeff, with everyone watching how bad McCarthy is not getting J-Jeff the ball.
But I don't know if I'd want
7 times. Oh, was that infuriating? As someone who wanted to lose aggressively, that was bad. I'd go get J-Jeff.
Addison had 11 targets, 3 catches, so that was like, I feel
he's
you there.
The ball constantly. But
what I'm looking at here, and we can talk about this more, is that I don't think you can buy either of these guys with those 2 players. I think it's going to take you a third player, and usually people don't want to do a 3-for-1 trade. So would I try it? Sure.
You could run at J-Jeff. I do think you could make a run at J-Jeff with those 2.
So the Atlanta backfield looks like an exploitable opportunity. I think you're absolutely right about this, CC. And Joe talked a little bit, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, about why Tyler Algier was a great handcuff to get into, as we were talking about the Woody Markses of the world and all that. Is Bijan a buy low or a potential landmine? I don't think he's a landmine, but the same thing needs to be said for, like, when we talk about like the Jonathan Taylor as well, is that where Bijan's probably going to get the majority of his touchdowns moving forward is going to be in those longer plays. So if you see that Atlanta gets down to the 1 or Atlanta gets down to the 5, there's a real possibility that ball is not going to Bijan. So Bijan's going to have to make his money and make it work from the 20-yard and beyond. So, and is it a time to buy low? If I were trading right now, right, and I wanted to get into Bijan right now, I think it's more likely that you could give Pickens and Breece Hall for a guy like Bijan right now.
I'll agree with that. And
I think that is more likely because the owner's going to be pissed off.
First off, I love the fact, CC, that you made sea hockey a word. I love that.
Hey, sea hockey.
And oh man. And the next thing is that with Atlanta overall, what they're doing is they're trying to preserve Bijan. They know he is the key to their season. They can't really rely upon Penix. It's just where they're at and where they're in their headspace. So they're trying to preserve Bijan for the duration so they can still be in this thing in December, which is probably a good decision if you are a Falcons coach. However, when times start getting desperate, aka fantasy playoffs, that guardrail's coming off. That there's no more restriction on Bijan usage.
Well,
and what I think you're going to see is Bijan not. I don't think they're going to have a Seahawks split in December. I think it's going to be
Joe,
Bijan get us in the playoffs.
Before we get to the
next
question,
that's why I would buy Bijan. I don't think he's a landmine.
They're 3-6, but when you look at the schedule coming down the pipeline, you have the Panthers, which have gotten better as a run defense, but still they could potentially run on them. It didn't happen the last time they played the Panthers, which was like the first signal to say, well, maybe this is worrisome. They have the Saints next. Then they have the Jets and the Seahawks, and that's before the fantasy playoffs of Buccaneers, Cardinals, and Falcons. So
they're going to be 6 and 7 in real life.
For me, I do like Bijan, but I am realistic about him as an owner as well, where, a 10-point game out of Bijan really hurts you because he's your stud, but he always has the chance to get that 20-point game, and it's still a possibility. So he is a guy that I'm buying. If I wanted to trade into him right now, I would.
They're 6 and 7. They're going to go all in on Bijan for your entire.
So this week, as it goes to the schedule in week 11, what we saw, statistically speaking, it's very hard on a weekly basis to predict what defenses will score touchdowns. But we do know, and we've talked about
Houston get one of the last play of the game.
We've talked about this a lot, CC, in terms of just opportunities, and that there's a real opportunity that the Rams will be able to score on Seattle, but there's an equal opportunity because the amount of attempts that are probably going to be had in that game that Seattle will be able to get a turnover to. So if you're looking at points as your overall metric, it's not Seattle. But if you're looking for a turnover, I think Seattle makes a whole lot of sense. Now, when we look at Atlanta, we said
Atlanta has to be taken off the list because Atlanta's at the Colts. So that's got to be taken off the list.
No, Atlanta is playing, Joe, Atlanta is playing Carolina this week. So when we look at this and say, is Carolina bad? Yes, but did Carolina?
I'm looking at the wrong week. My bad. Yeah. Sorry.
Did Carolina fool us all the last time they played? Absolutely. So I don't think I can start Atlanta because they're not a team that's good at generating so many turnovers statistically, and they're not a team that's good at keeping scores down. So I think I'm off Atlanta, although it's a good enough matchup on paper. And then when you look at Miami has showed up for the past couple of weeks, and it's been really weird. We've talked about this with Wumbo a lot. But Miami's facing Washington, and I think that's the matchup that I would go after if I'm looking for points to go to be less scored. So Seattle for the turnovers.
That's the one that's overseas, though.
And again, that sits. I think that's still true. I think.
Yeah, I don't know, Bob.
Because here's the thing, Joe. When we look at these overseas games, they tend to be dominated by running backs and tight ends. And so the running back for the Washington Commanders is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt after Chris Rodriguez got hurt. There's nothing that strikes fear in my heart about that offense right now. Although Miami's not a great defense, I think on a week overseas in a matchup that's probably going to feature tight ends and running backs, that they have a little bit of an edge because they're probably going to keep the ball a little bit more, because the thing you got to know is Washington doesn't cause a lot of turnovers either. So the time of possession will probably be in their favor, knowing that they could run the clock out with Achane or Ollie Gordon. So I think I'd lean Miami for a lot of different reasons, but I think Seattle on the turnover market is pretty nice, actually. CC, is it time to be concerned about? Is it? I know you wouldn't. Is it time to be concerned about the Bills? James Cook looks like he's playing hurt, and Dalton Kincaid is now injured. I don't think it's time to be worried on them from a strictly like team standpoint. But if I were investing in a Colt, or not in a Colt, if I were investing in a Bill right now, I'd probably lean into probably Coleman. But at the same time, in the same point in time, like Josh Allen can do so much with so little. And it doesn't matter really who's in the game as long as Josh Allen is there. Again, that didn't quite work out this week in the capacity that, we know that they can. But I do think that for me at least, that Josh Allen is going to Josh Allen when he has the opportunity to. Having playmakers go down sucks. But again, Shakir is also another guy. Shakir isn't going to get a touchdown most weeks, but the weeks that he does, it's going to be on a broken play, and he's going to have a good total of receptions. So I think if there was a bill you wanted to lean on, you could lean on Shakir. But for the big play potential, Coleman is reasonable enough. Now, who would I prioritize?
I'm still leaning on Cook. I think Cook's your dog.
I'm saying Cook is still your dog, but I'm saying if I'm looking for a different bill, and I needed to work my way into a different bill, then I think it would be Shakir and Coleman. Now, which one am I prioritizing here? It's RJ Harvey. While Parker Washington had a tremendous game from a touchdown perspective, what we're seeing here is that J.K. Dobbins got hurt, and he is seeking out a second opinion on his injury. Now,
the first one was bad.
That could mean something crazy, but it's very likely that he's going to miss significant time. And they just traded away Audric Estime, or they let Audric Estime walk, and he's on the Saints now. So you're looking at Tyler Beatty and RJ Harvey. We have already seen in limited production how good RJ Harvey can be for this team. And while he might not get a dominant snap share, in the limited role that he has looked good. And that didn't materialize against the Raiders. But going forward, my expectation is that they utilize him in the capacity that they utilized him before, but just more. And that's going to be good opportunities for him. So for me, I'm leaning on RJ Harvey there. I know it's weird because Parker Washington's the one with the touchdown this week. I think both are good, but I would lean into
So this is basically the difference to justify Bob's pick. Parker Washington isn't sustainable. Harvey is, because Harvey's now the dude the rest of the year. He was drafted to be the dude. Parker Washington was a stopgap because the two dudes in front of him were hurt. They're both going to come back, and Parker Washington's value will decline. Period.
And guys, we see all the comments and questions in the chat. Thank you so much. We will get to every one of them. We are Local Football Flavor. We answer all the questions and comments. If you want to watch us on replay, feel free to do that. If you want to stick around, we have a great community here. So shout out to everybody in the chat.
And use Jason PayPal link, baby.
Yeah. Jason, quarterbacks are Daniel Jones, Barkley, Kyron, Chase, London, Nico. Love that. Henry is my tight end. The flex is Javonte. The flex is Sutton. Bench is Dak, Hampton, Marks, Tracy, Terry. How can I upgrade my tight end or just stream weekly to not downgrade? So this is how I feel about this, Jason, is that looking at your league, there is probably a veritable hodgepodge of guys that you can.
Yeah, who are your flex tight ends right now?
That you can slot in on a weekly basis. If I'm seeing Henry, K. Strange, and Schultz as my options on the waiver wire, I'm definitely
Schultz and Henry are a push.
I'm definitely on Schultz. I know that K. had a great week this week after I said I didn't think he'd have the chance to do that. But Schultz was one of our guys last week, and he paid out. Strange is going to be interesting coming back from IR. But I think that I wouldn't trade anybody on your team to get an upgraded tight end because that upgrade is going to come at a big cost to you. If I were going to upgrade and I was confident in Barkley, Kyron, and Javonte moving forward, what I would want to do is pair a pretty good performance from Woody Marks where he got the majority of the snap share. So he's on the ascension. If you want to move Sutton and Marks to upgrade that tight end and that flex position in some capacity, you could. But for me, ideally, what I'd be looking for is not the tight end because I think that production can be found with Schultz or with Otten or with Henry or with Strange on a daily basis or on a weekly basis.
Yeah, that's a push. Yeah.
Even Juwan Johnson, if you can go out and get him, like we were talking about last week, I would move Sutton and Marks to really upgrade that last flex spot, or I would be rolling in. or I'd be putting Marks into that flex spot from here on out, most likely, until Hampton were to come back. So that's kind of the approach that I would take to this. And we can talk more about that later, but I do think that that's a reasonable kind of mentality.
And you know what, Jason, I would actually do this tonight before he goes off. I would do Sutton and Marks for Devontae. Devontae's going to go off tonight. And if you can get this agreement down now, I'd do it.
And then do I drop Mike Evans for Judy, Godwin, Gainwell, Corum, Gordon, or Emmanuel Wilson? So if I were dropping Mike Evans for one of these guys, I think it's reasonable to say that all of these guys have their pitfalls, right? Wilson, for me, is an interesting guy because he would assume the mantle if Jacobs were to get injured long-term, and the mantle of a Green Bay running back is good to have. That's a very good fantasy standpoint. But
I'd rather have
Corum, and that's fair as well. Ollie Gordon doesn't
take off this list because he does not belong with the others.
I'll say that again.
Gainwell needs to be taken off that list.
Yeah, I take Gainwell off the list. And Gordon is slightly off the list as well, Jason, because he doesn't project to be immediately that Achane kind of replacement guy. He has a different skill set. So, and Godwin isn't even close for me. Judy's interesting, though, Jason, because we just saw him have a good performance after not having any good performances like for most of the year. He's been zeroed out a lot. But when we look at the good games for Jerry Jeudy this year, and there haven't been many, it's in that 5 for 60, 4 for 50, 3 for 40, 5 for 40, 6 for 70, and a touchdown. So I'm not enthused by Jerry Jeudy, but
no,
if you're not wanting to replace Mike Evans with a running back, Jerry Jeudy would be the wide receiver out of that grouping of guys that I would think about, but I'd rather have the running back. And
I think I'd rather have Godwin than Jeudy.
That's totally dealer's
much better passing attack.
I get what you're saying, but Godwin's not coming back in the near future, and Judy's currently playing.
So that's the risk. Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of the way.
I guess in that regard, you're talking about today, or you wouldn't be considering this if you weren't needing it for today. You're right, Bob. But so the where Bob and I disagree with is which running back to take. But if you're needing to go receiver, I would actually probably lean Tillman. I know that he's available in every league.
Good option. 12.
I like Tillman more than Jeudy if you're talking Browns.
I mean, and here, guys, don't forget that if you have the opportunity, and the opportunity window is going to close a little bit fairly soon, but Tez Johnson's still a great option. Like he's probably somewhere still on the waiver wire, somewhere in there. He's a great option. Seems to have good rapport with them. Also, there's still a buy window for Juwan Jennings, guys. And I understand, Ricky Pearsall might eventually come back, just like Bucky Irving might eventually come back. But Jennings is performing well. So I would try my best to get out on him. Start one this week. Henry, K-Dot, and Stranger Schultz. I know you have Nico and Woody already, but Schultz is a lifeblood for this team. There has not been a moment there has not been a game, I believe, in the last couple of weeks here, guys, where Schultz has commanded like less than 5 targets, I believe.
Yeah, Mills goes to Schultz.
Yeah.
He goes.
I mean,
Collins goes to the Schultz. I wouldn't worry about that.
Against San Francisco, he had 3 targets, but other than that, it's been 6 targets, 10 targets, 8 targets, and 11 targets. I think you have to go Schultz. Even when considering matchup. We'll revisit this question, though, on Thursday, Jason. In this other league, quarterback is Jackson Dart, Cook, Genty, St. Brown, Waddle, Pittman, Goddard. In the tight end position, the flex is Rico. The other flex is Jalen Warren. The bench is Kamara, Chubb, Tet, and more. Who can I trade Tet for? I don't want to start 2 Panthers. It's reasonable to believe that you don't want to start 2 Panthers.
Good life policy.
But I don't think right now that Tet carries as much value as everybody wants him to. Joe was talking a lot about this, and unfortunately, he's on a team that is targeting him, so that's good. But those targets are not materializing into a quality amount of yards but it's average.
It's almost like when the breakdown was the guy can't separate or move after the catch, that's coming true.
If I have Tet, I think it's reasonable to say pair up Tet and Pittman and see what you can get. Now, Pittman is going to...
Let me give you a long shot, Jason, because
Pittman's going to be good. Don't get me wrong.
So you could do a shot in the dark on an injured player who might really bang out. I'd go get Garrett Wilson. Because if Garrett Wilson comes back, he's an infinite better than Tet. He's your flex immediately. You can definitely try to get him now because the injury risk. He just got re-injured. So
yeah, that's why I don't want him.
That's about the value of Ted's peak, in my opinion.
No, I don't want him. I want to move Tet. If I'm moving Tet and I'm pairing him up with and I just want to do, say I wanted to do a straight trade, right? Tet for someone.
Uh-huh.
Who are the guys that I would want? I would see if I could get Juwan Jennings, honestly, to tell you the truth. I know it's a name downgrade, but people might want to do that. You could possibly pair some things up or maybe add just one more piece to get into, to try to get into a Marvin Harrison Jr. still with Jacoby Brissett. And also, don't forget, Wan'Dale Robinson with Jackson Dart is great. With Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston, we don't know. So he's interesting.
Well, he dropped a pass that would have won them that game. So I don't know how much love he's going to get.
And another guy is Zay Flowers. I think you could trade Tet straight into Zay Flowers if you like that schedule a little bit better.
Fall that hard.
Realistically, yeah, for most people, dude. For most people,
I think your highest ceiling play is Garrett.
Do Wilson. I drop Nick Chubb or Tootin for Judy, Coleman, Gainwell, Gordon, Emmanuel Wilson, Isaiah Davis? If I'm dropping one of them, I think it is okay to drop Chubb for a guy like Coleman. He's out of that grouping of guys. Answer. If I was dropping Chubb, I would drop him for Coleman. When I look at Bashal Tootin too, Bashal Tootin just got hurt.
And Etienne looks like a dude.
And Etienne, and it looks like the way that they're using players there is back to where they were at before. So I think Tootin is probably your safer one to drop because the Houston can generate offense at a pretty good pace, even with a scrub of a quarterback. And while Nick Chubb has lost opportunities, if Woody Marks were to get injured in any capacity, he would be back up on the menu. So
okay, Bob. So with this next one, we're gonna come back to CC there and do KJ's deep dives first. Because KJ gave us a bunch of deep dives again before the show started, so we appreciate that.
Yeah, we got you. Jesse, I see you there.
Let's dive into this. Firing out for a better and upcoming. Bo Nix, Sam Darnold, or should I pick up Tua or the Mariota instead? So first off, I want to go out there and say I was 100% right on don't play Nix. And the situation.
Yeah, but the difference between Bo Nix and Sam Darnold was like 2 points because they both Seattle won that game in way different.
Darnold just started fumbling, and then he was up by 1 million, so they benched him. Here's the thing: you're not going to play Arizona every week where you put up 35 points in your first 5 drives, and then you just go home, which is essentially what they did. So he first off, he was amazing until it happened. They got 2 defensive touchdowns.
Can you imagine, Joe?
Same play. It looked awesome.
Can you imagine if Seattle, if Sam Darnold was able to pass the ball to JSN for a full game? Can you just?
He could have got 200 yards. And it's because of that reason I'm going to go with Darnold out of this group. I don't want to go with Tua overseas. I've seen too many passing attacks go overseas, especially the finesse ones that are all about cutting, that the ground isn't the same because it's on the soccer grass, the feet give way, and the passing game doesn't work. I'm actually considering not playing Waddle because of that. Now, with that being said, that takes Tua out of the picture. I can't trust anything about the Redskins offense. So Mariota's out. And to me, this comes straight up to Darnold or Bo, and I'm going Darnold. I can't trust. Here's the bottom. They are treating Bo Nix the way Bill Cowher treated Ben Roethlisberger. I know this is a Hall of Fame reference, which is probably too rough or too rich for him. But the bottom line is he wants to hand the ball off, be a game manager, and don't lose. Bo Nix might be a dude later on in his career, but this year, when he has a divisional lead, he's not letting Bo Nix throw it away. And you see it in the way that those games are being run. And Sean Payton, being a guy who won a division a couple of times in his life, knows how to do this. He's not letting Bo Nix throw this division away. And that's why not only am I on Darnold for this week, I'm in Darnold ROS, baby.
Well, that was quite a delight to hear for many different reasons. But the thing that I want to say, statistically speaking, though, like just backing it up to what we know Sam Darnold does best, okay, is that when we look at this team and we look at the slate, right, and we just go based off of the numbers and we see, okay, Seattle's going to be facing the Rams. And while statistically that might be a difficult matchup for quarterbacks, what we see is that they are allowing, okay, the most passing attempts to quarterbacks over the last 4 games. When you look at the totality of the season, the Rams are still top 8 in what they allow to quarterbacks in terms of passing attempts. They allow a moderate amount of completions. It's still top 10. But the other thing here, too, is that what we said about Sam Darnold is that as a team, right, the Rams are allowing 225 yards per game to passers. Where this really kills Sam Darnold, though, is that they are not allowing a lot of touchdowns. Okay, so one of the things that we know about Sam Darnold is that they're not afraid to throw the ball. They will throw the ball in competitive matchups. The recent matchups weren't very hyper competitive. This one tends to be that it will be a little bit more competitive because when you look at how these defenses roll, yes, Seattle is causing a lot of turnovers and such, but their defense is also allowing a good amount of pass completions and a good amount of pass attempts. They're actually second in the league. Okay. So when you look at it from that perspective and you see that there is potentiality for 2 quarterbacks that will and can throw the ball upwards of 35 times a game, and you see that is screaming green flags to play those guys. Now, the only thing that you could potentially worry about in a matchup like that if it were in Seattle, would have been weather. But this is in California, right? This is at SoFi. So when I look at this and I say, Bo Nix is facing the Chiefs, and he might have to play comeback in that game. Most definitely will have to play comeback in the game. And there's a likelihood that his ceiling will be somewhere in 3 touchdowns total. Tua will probably get around 2 touchdowns and maybe 2 turnovers. And Mariota will probably end up somewhere in that 2 touchdown market as well. So what you're looking at is, will Sam Darnold throw for 3 touchdowns, and will he have 300 plus yards? I think it's very likely that he can do that in a competitive matchup where Seattle's running game isn't very good. So they're not going to be able to beat the Rams that way. They're going to have to beat them by getting the ball to JSN and Rashid Shaheed. So in my opinion, I think that Sam Darnold, from a statistical standpoint, at this moment in time, is a better play. Now, when Thursday comes around, we'll have the stats better for this past week that just happened to see if those change any. But I really do think that Sam Darnold in this matchup is good. The next guy up for me would actually be Tua, because everything that Joe said about the soccer fields and stuff is accurate. But what we know about this offense is that this offense runs through Waddle and Achane. And there's a strong likelihood that both of them catch a touchdown in this game because Washington can't stop anything. So, in my opinion, those are the 2 quarterbacks out of this grouping of quarterbacks, and Bo Nix and Mariota aren't even on the table.
I just want to go on a secondary thing here. It really upsets me that Mike Daniels saved his job. That has just upset me because he's definitely winning this week. But before you jump down to the CC, KJ had more to this. Yahoo can get weird in your settings, guys. So he had a setting where if the guy didn't play in the starting roster, you can move him, and someone cut Rodgers for Burrow. And that's why this isn't a true deep dive because it's a little side note. Burrow practiced today. Cool. Burrow is not playing on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road. If you look historically, that is his worst opponent, especially in the first game back from an injury or to start a season.
Well, his window
to win, yeah. I know it, but you do not want, even if Burrow plays, you do not want to play Burrow. And this is strictly based upon seeing Mike Tomlin for 18 years. You do not want to play Joe Burrow the first game back from an injury in Heinz Field against the Steelers. It just will not work for you. Every game thereafter, yeah, you're playing Burrow to the moon. So just putting that out there as a starting point for y'all. Now, CC, to your question, does the Giants firing Daboll change my outlook on Dart for the rest of the year? No, it doesn't, because Dart for me was always a great luxury pickup and go from there. What's much more concerning is Dart's concussion and the fact that virtually every game he's had to go to that blue tent. So Dart to me is a nice
This is the fourth time he's been evaluated for a concussion this year. This is the fourth time.
Yeah, you can't bank on him. And quite frankly, the fact that he might be like in career jeopardy, because if the new regime comes in and thinks they can't rely on him, he's out of New York before it even starts because they're having a top 5 pick.
So do I think it changes the outlook on New York for the totality of the season? I don't. I think that in general, you look at this team, they're 2-8. And you know, it's not that they haven't been competitive in some of these matchups though. Like there has been matchups where they've been competitive in and then matchups where they haven't. And like the slate that they have on the menu, Packers, Lions, Patriots, Commanders, Vikings, Raiders, and Cowboys are totally like, I think that in some of those matchups that you're actually going to probably get a better game if you're playing Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart is a better quarterback right now than Russell Wilson. I'm not fighting that.
He plays with his life on the line, and it shows, and he's very reckless. But I do think that when you look at Dart from a developmental standpoint, right, is that this is part of his development. He's going to have to make mistakes. He's going to have to get popped. He's going to become a better quarterback for doing so. So there's no reason to slow down his development because of this. However, the same description of
neurological evaluators going to slow down his development. He has to pass the test.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that from a coaching standpoint, no, because this is the Mike McDaniel argument all over again. He plays Tua even after Tua was basically dead on the field.
I don't think the new guy will.
And the new guy, I think the new guy's just going to keep playing Dart because that's the future of this team. And there's no reason to bench him. There's no reason to rein it in with him.
Well, they're not going to bench him right now. I'm saying I'm worried about
there's no reason to rein it in with him because they're going to be losing games. So
no doubt.
There's a very real possibility that Jackson Dart will probably average 25 points in every start that he has the rest of the season.
Yeah, so my whole point is not banking on him because I don't think you're going to get a lot more starts out of him. He's a luxury item to have on your bench. That's how I view Jackson Dart.
He's starting.
You started, but you can't get rid of your other quarterback. So that's what I'm saying. You have him as a luxury item and you play him, but he gonna get hurt. I mean, there's just this guy plays like he's gonna get hurt.
Quarterback is Nix, Rico, Vidal. Vidal had a good week this week after me shitting on him this past week. Actually, shitting on the Steelers defense and Joe Alt.
Which,
Puka, Nico, Tet, Warren, Flex, Shakir, Flex, Wandale, benches Hampton, Soon, Kamara, White, Bucky out for the year. It looks like Bucky is not even going to play, so that kind of sucks.
When he said there was no timetable for return.
Ricky Pearsall, Ayuk. Which running back to target to trade Ted? So if I am trading one of those, if I'm trading into a running back right now, because I want to get a little bit more flexibility within my lineup, I think that the running backs that I'm targeting, absolutely one of the best running backs that you can still target right now is still Josh Jacobs. He's going to cost you a lot. You're going to have to pair Tet with a bunch of other guys. James Cook's down week plus the injury. puts him on the menu for some people. And again, you can't trade Tet straight into him, but you can begin to think about it. For your team, Jason, there is a real possibility that with the player capital that you have, that you might be able to land Bijan Robinson with another down week that he had. There's a potential. But if I'm looking at mid-level guys, it's still like your Quinshon Judkins. Quinshon Judkins is still a buy. He's just an average buy right now. And not much else outside of that. Because the Bears running back schedule is going to get a little bit harder. Ashton Genty's schedule is going to get a little bit harder. Rico's not being sold for anything. So there's not much room to work with there. So I think that if I'm trading Tet, it's got to be Tet and a piece to make it more enticing to give up a running back in return. So it's probably going to have to be Tet and maybe Kamara or maybe Rachaad White, and see if you can get something built out for that for maybe Quinshon Judkins. I think that he would be the guy that I would target because people are really low on him right now. But if you look at the stats, right, he's getting all of the volume. The only thing that has to change for him is the touchdown metric. And that's the one bugaboo for him is when we see his games, when he has a great game, it's because the touchdowns happen. When he has the Bijan game, Bijan had a great game. He just didn't get the touchdowns. He had 87 yards. That's a great week from a yardage standpoint. He just didn't get any of the touchdowns to work in his favor. So those two guys, you have the player capital to go after them. If you pair Shakir, Vidal, and a couple other guys on your team, you could absolutely go out and get some really good players. Should I drop Ayuk for Golden, Corum, Gainwell, Tootin, Nick Chubb, Emmanuel Wilson? No. I mean, maybe for
you should drop Ayuk. Starting. You should drop Ayuk.
Maybe for Corum, maybe for Nick Chubb. I think that either of those that you could drop him. Probably Corum would be your next best hold.
Corum would be the one I'd recommend, Jason.
And that's where I would go with that, Jason. Which tight end is the best this week? Theo Johnson, already starting Wan'Dale. Strange, Cade Otton, already starting White. Here's the thing, guys. When you're starting the running back, the variance that you guys are worried about it's not what you need to be worrying about. If I'm starting a running back from the same team and I start the tight end, logic dictates and stats dictate that if this team is moving the ball, then positionally, those two types of positions are great for red zone opportunities. So if I'm looking at it and I'm saying these two guys are on the same team, it doesn't really matter to me. What matters is what quarterback is playing. If Jackson Dart is not playing, Theo Johnson is a bench for me. So by default, I think at this point in time on Monday, I would probably lean a little bit into Otton, not particularly because I like Otton overall. He had a great game this past week. That cannot be slept on. Lots of targets went his way, and that's kind of just how things went. But Tampa Bay plays Buffalo, and when we look at the stat pool from that game this past week and how Buffalo plays tight ends in general, Buffalo is sitting there at they're kind of dominating against the tight end position over the last several weeks. So they're only giving up around 7 fantasy points to tight ends. So I think all three of these options, I'd kind of look in the other direction unless I heard that Dart was playing, and then I'd land on Theo Johnson. He's been a dog recently. And here's the thing, Joe, just revisiting this, the reason I was faced this way is because I wasn't I was being attentive to what you were saying, but I was like, oh, I'm going to check my one league. And what do you know? The guy who keeps streaming quarterbacks and doesn't want to trade for Matt Stafford just picked him up. So he's got the lowest points in the league.
You should pick up Burrow. And Jason's asking how much fab should you spend on him. I'm picking Burrow up. I'm in need of a quarterback too, but I am not planning on playing him this week.
Yeah, if you're in Yahoo,
on all of my teams.
Yeah, Yahoo allowed that to happen. The guy dropped Will Shipley and picked up Joe Burrow. So if you can get that done now, just like KJ said, if you can get that done now and you can put him on your IR and your league allows stuff like this, go for it. By all means, go for it.
Yeah, you got to have someone on your Monday night roster, though, to do it.
Fab-wise, That's a tough one. Fab wise,
if you need a quarterback, we're late enough in the year where I consider half of what you got left.
If you needed a quarterback and you were willing to wait on him, yeah. But just understand that like there's a good chance that like even when you want to play him, he's only going to be relevant for you if you make the fantasy playoffs. So if you're like in the middle right now and you don't have like a guaranteed spot, I don't think he's really going to help you. But I don't want anybody else in my league to have him. And at this point in time, like if you can still work the waivers without having your fab, that's fair. But I would say probably like 15% of whatever I have remaining. But I'd have to look at what everybody else had remaining. Should I play Otten over Ferguson this coming week? Full PPR. So like I said, the matchup for Otten is poor this week. Based off the stats that we have, we don't have the new ones up yet from this past week that just happened. But we look at it and we say, okay, New England played the tight end well, and look what happened. Otten had a great game. So, like, if you want to roll yourself into Cade Otten, like, I think it's a poor matchup, but he's getting the volume. So that's kind of a thing that work out in his favor there. As it goes for Dallas, I think it's always good to start Ferguson. I don't have a problem with that. Again, Vegas is kind of a weird team. Sometimes they play good, sometimes they don't. You can beat them in a couple of different ways. Dallas has the capability to beat them in a couple of ways. Ferguson kind of dudded on us, recently. I think I'm on Ferguson because I think that Dallas has a good chance to score a lot of points in that game. But in a competitive matchup, Otten could be really good. It really all depends on how the health of that team looks. You know what I'm saying, Joe?
Yeah. So,
Drifter.
Sorry, family.
This is like me. I love that you said this. I love that you said this because every time I trade for an asset, it always feels like the next week or the next 2 weeks that guy's like dead. And like, it's like crazy. So in Dynasty, what would you expect to pay for Dowdle? He feels like last year's Hubbard. But here's the thing though.
Family, you're 100% right. But the thing that I want you guys to remember, especially in Dynasty, it doesn't really matter for redraft. Dowdle's not their week 1 starter next year. It's that kid they drafted in the first round from Texas last year.
The one that's always
who just hurt all year. Yeah. He will be their starting running back next year. So you cannot spend anything of consequence for Rico Dowdle. You should sell him to people who aren't paying attention, but you should not spend anything of consequence in a dynasty for Rico Dowdle. You just shouldn't.
I mean, I have lots of opinions about that. And just in terms of like production, right, is that we might get 2 years in a row of Rico Dowdle as 1,000-yard rusher on 2 different teams. So if, let's say what's Dowdle's contract look like, Joe?
Let me look it up. Him. I'll have to go pull that up.
I know they
but
signed. So,
Jason, breaking news. Wilson's out for the rest of the year, basically.
Dunzo, then. You don't want to trade for Wilson. He was a guy that I was looking at a couple weeks ago, but again, that sucks. But back to this question here about Dowdle is that he's on a 1-year deal, and he's proving that even if Carolina doesn't re-sign him, which is very likely if they believe that Chuba or one of those other guys is a stronger option, that he can do it anywhere. If he can have 2 1,000-yard seasons on 2 different teams, one of them having a poor offensive line and the other one being slightly above average to average, I think that he goes to a team like Kansas City, for example. And imagine what he could do in Kansas City, right? So if I want to go after Rico Dowdle, I'm not thinking about him as a Panther next year. I'm thinking about him as potentially a Kansas City Chief next year, and I'm paying a price that I think would be affordable for that. So I'm thinking about picks.
Yeah, if that's the case, whoever goes out and buys them, maybe it's Kansas City, maybe it's not. But the point is someone's going to want them, and that's a valid point. That being said, didn't work out too well for Najee. So, all right. So
an injury thing,
CC, your receiver room is stacked. So you said Chase, but you don't really want Chase. All right. So I'm fine with that. If you're
Honestly,
looking
I still would
for,
want him. If I could play Jamar Chase, Nico, and CD over A.J. Brown and Pickens, I still want him. So,
or you
like,
make it A.J. Brown that you give up instead
I
of
get it.
Pickens. And that's actually, see, looking at your team, I would push for A.J. Brown and Brees for the Chase conversation. And really lean into the fact that Burrow ain't playing this week.
All right, so Nino asked this from his phone. There's like a little icon on the side where the question came from, and it looks like it came from the phone, Nino. So I like that.
Watching it vertically. That's a test we're doing today, guys.
I'm now only 3-7, but still definitely in the running for a playoff. It happens, Nino. Well, let's make a push for you. The team is Hurts, Gibbs, Chase Brown, Ramondre Spears, Brashard Smith, Amari DiMercado, Egbuka, BTJ, Marv, QJ, Keon, Trey Tucker at wide receiver, Andrews at tight end. Someone wants Hurts off me, so would you package one of those running backs and Hurts for like a Genty Brees? So when I look at this, I say yes. So here's the thing that I want to tell you, and this is like the dangers, right? So Nino, in my home league, I was struck by injuries. We tried to make trades. The league doesn't trade. I was able to get a trade done. I got Lamar and Quinshon Judkins. Turns out that was not the trade you wanted to make because the guys I gave up are performing a little bit better. And I knew they were going to perform, but I had to make a move, right? I had to try to change the season around. Now, when you look at the statistical opportunities of quarterbacks is right now I slotted Lamar Jackson into my starting lineup. But Davis Mills, Drake May, all these other quarterbacks, Stafford, some guys that you could still find on the waivers, outscored Lamar Jackson this week. And I think that Hurts is not the asset at this point in time that if you have the opportunity to get guys off your waiver wire to that capacity, like if they're sitting there with a Tua, or if you're sitting there with a Mariota, or if you're sitting there with Davis Mills as just a long shot example, right? Quarterbacks, they're either going to be somewhere in that, like, unless you're a Justin Fields or you have a terrible game like Rodgers and Darnold, there's always going to be some sort of quarterback on the market that has the chance to score the same as Jalen Hurts, right? So for me, he's going to score, right? And he has the chance to score 30 plus points in a game. That is true. But when I look at your team and I look at where you're hurting is that you have no movement or ability to kind of flex anybody else in your lineup. Because right now, Ramondre's hurt, and Brashard Smith and Amari DiMercado had a good enough fantasy game. And then you got the BTJ who's not playing, and Igbuka and Marv. So if it were me, I do think that pairing Hurts up with, let's say, a lower end option, or send Amari, or send Ramondre, or send Spears, whoever you want out of that grouping of guys. I wouldn't send Chase Brown. I'd keep him. But if you wanted to trade Hurts and one of those running backs to get something better, I think that that's something that I would do. And I would try to get me a guy. Now, if you guys have heard everything that I've said about Breece Hall, he ended up having another good game against a good, solid defense. And that looks like it's going to continue to happen, knowing what we saw last week. Whatever the matchup is, if Garrett Wilson is out and Justin Fields can't throw the ball, there's a very strong likelihood that they are going to run Breece Hall 21 times, 22 times until the wheels fall off.
And so they kind of fell off.
Last week, we said we would trade him and see what we could get for him because we don't see a lot of ceiling games. But if you're trading Hurts and Spears, or Hurts and Ramondre, and you can get back Breece and something else, sure. Genty, do I want him? Not necessarily, but you can make up the value of what Hurts does at quarterback to you. And like, it goes back to like a rule that I broke when I traded for Lamar Jackson, is like, I don't want to trade for a quarterback because that value is there. That's the reason why we were saying earlier in the season, you can find quarterbacks in the 9th, 10th round. You don't always have to go after the Josh Allens. You don't always have to go after the Jalen Hurtses. They do have the highest potential as a ceiling output, but some of these other guys are really surprising. And I think that I would rather.
Hurts has been carrying my team, and if he drops 30 tonight, I pull a Monday Night Miracle. So it's possible.
Yeah, but logistically, Joe, if you could trade Jalen Hurts and a player to get into another running back, if you're hurting at running back, you'd probably do it.
Yeah, no, I get it. You have to, you going back to draft prep, you have to have confidence in your late to mid round guys if you're going with a quarterback early or tight end early, quite frankly.
Yeah, and it's something to just kind of continue to think about. I think I would do it, but I'd want more than Brees. If I was trading away Jalen Hurts and like Ramondre or Spears, I'd want more than Brees back. I'd want something else. I'd want like another wide receiver to make up that difference for BTJ.
And
like if I could,
so family moves Brissett for Judy, and that's an example of getting the position player is better off than having the quarter. And for your run-of-the-mill quarterbacks, I agree with that. I'd rather have the position player, but the elite ones are the elite ones, and I feel differently about them.
Hey, Donta, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. We do answer all questions here, so if we didn't answer your question right away, just know that we will get to it. Notice that my opponent needed a quarterback desperately this week, so dealt him Brissett for Judy. I still beat him, and Brissett was the highest score. Here's the thing, Drifter. This is what like Joe said, this is what I was just talking about. Like, I traded for Lamar, and I traded good assets to get into Lamar and Judkins, because at the time I still do believe in Judkins, like I told all of you guys. But the asset difference, I could have just kept Stafford and just kept on the course and went with it. But again, trading for quarterbacks is always a dicey issue, because you can always find something. There's a good matchup somewhere along the line somewhere. Should I trade away Bucky for Trevion Henderson? This is like nightmare fuel for me, Adam. This is really nightmare fuel for me, because we talked 2 weeks ago. We were telling Jesse 2 weeks ago, before Ramondre got hurt, we were saying, and most people were saying this as well, is like, okay, it's time to let go of Henderson. A lot of people just then picked Henderson up off the bench, and Ramondre gets hurt. He throws up a 31-point game this week. Would I trade Bucky Irving into Trevion Henderson? Right now, Trevion Henderson's playing. So if you need to win games, I'd think about it.
If you have 6 or more wins, the answer is no.
If you have 6 wins or more, yeah, you don't do it. But if you're fighting for that last playoff spot and you need points now, sure. I'm not going to say yes, definitely, but I don't think it's like I said, it's nightmare fuel for me. But I do think that if you need points now, you got to go out and get points. Is Trevion the guy that I want? Probably not. But he is probably the guy you could get, because people won't believe that 31-point performance. CC, does the clown in the big red shoes try to put the genie back in the damn lamp with Ramondre stuff? Or is it Hendy rest the season? Shake my head. Shame this is even a real thing. Well, CC, I believe also that at some point in that game, Trevion Henderson did get dinged up. And then they were talking about Terrell Jennings, and they were like, oh, we want to give Terrell Jennings more opportunities. This was prior to the week. We want to give Terrell Jennings more opportunities. The guy's a clown. I mean, he can win games, and I'm sure he's a very good coach. But from a fantasy perspective, him and Tyler Algier are at the top of my list, right? Those two guys are at the top of my list in terms of players that I own that you're just constantly getting dicked over with. I think you got to run Henderson the rest of the way. They're not a better team. I mean, this has shown that they can win regardless of who's back there. You know what I'm saying? So, I
think he's a Patriot coach, and he's going to make you hate life. So you have to be assumed that you're going to get messed over.
So Burrow, I LOL'd at this as well when I saw it. He's back and practicing with the team, but they're a month away. Like I said, I'm only going out there and getting Godwin if I have the IR spot, or only going out there and getting Burrow if I have the IR spot and I think I have a chance at the playoffs, or I want to prevent him from being on a playoff caliber team. I think that he's not going to be playing anytime soon. But the good news is Hampton shed that walking boot, so we'll see. We'll see what his timeline is. Week 12 was when he could begin practicing. Maybe you might see him in week 14, right before the fantasy playoffs. So that's going to be an interesting hold. Where do you guys rank Henderson and RJ Harvey rest of the season? KJ, if you would have asked us this question 3 weeks ago, it would have been at the bottom. They would have been at the bottom of the list. of players to rank rest of season.
Yeah, but just going across from each other, it's still the same answer for me, and it's still Harvey. Like, so, I don't trust Vrabel.
This is the funny thing, though. Remember, we talked about we started the show talking
Henderson's
about parity.
A better player. I'm not fighting that.
We talked about the show talking about parity and variance, right? And to see that variance just in this question itself, like I said, 3 weeks ago, these two guys were not even thought about as being starters anymore on people's rosters.
Sure.
Now they're starting. So opportunities present themselves. Players take advantage of it. I do like Harvey rest of season because even when Dobbins is there, if Dobbins is playing, even when he is there, they do look to Harvey in certain instances in time, right? Mm-hmm. Henderson is basically an afterthought if Ramondre Stevenson is playing. So while I like Henderson better as a player, I think that RJ Harvey's opportunity is going to come this week. And I do like him at this moment in time, rest of season. But Vrabel's made a fool out of everybody, you know. Do we trade Woody Marks? Back to that question that was up here, I believe. I think the Marks is a great trade candidate. We talked about how you compare him up with some wide receivers and go after a player, especially if you're in a playoff push. Go after a player that has some really good quality performances still left in the tank. And we're starting to get to that time where what do we think about the Houston Texans moving forward is the best question. Is that they're going to keep Woody Marks the ball. What will those opportunities turn into? They play the Chargers, Colts, and Raiders in the fantasy playoffs. Cardinals, Raiders, Chargers fantasy playoffs. You got matchups against the Titans, Bills, Colts, and Chiefs. If you want to hold them this week when they play the Titans, I think he's a great start against the Titans whenever they play the Titans. Would you guys drop Trey Tucker? Jesse, again, variance. This was an opportunity for Trey Tucker this past week to really ball out, and Geno Smith got hurt. They didn't do anything. I think it's fair to drop Trey Tucker.
I don't think you can rely on Geno Smith being
Geno's injury. You can't rely on him right now. Jesse's also on the vertical view. I like that. Should I trade Brees or hold on to him? Jesse, there's so many ways. I'm
getting rid of him. You can't have 2 points, 2 yards of offense and think that's a team you want to be in. Which, by the way, Jacksonville did the exact same thing.
Yeah. I think that Brees is a guy that if you can get full value out of him, like we were talking about, earlier, people thinking about trading Hurts and something else to get into Brees Hall. If I could get a value that I thought was good, like still like a Judkins and something else, I think that the same problems for Brees are going to be the same problems that we see out of the Browns, is that unless their defense is overperforming, there's going to be limited opportunities depending upon the quarterback that is there. Both of those running backs can perform on limited opportunities. They just have to continue to get the ball. And because the Jets went up to a lead early in that game, Brees got a little bit more work. I think he's a hold unless the price is right. Unless, I think it's always the case for a guy like Brees. Nick,
always right.
You're taking L's. It's rough. I hear that. Do you have any recommendations for waiver wire pickups this week? It's RJ Harvey. It's Parker Washington. I'm not going to say Jalen Naylor. I said Jalen Naylor, like I believe last week when we were talking about watch out for Jalen Naylor. He ended up having a good game. But I'm not taking him because those opportunities were really wild and crazy. I still think that if Tez Johnson is not rostered, Tez Johnson needs to be rostered. I do think that a guy like Mac Hollins is interesting as long as Kayshon Boutte is out. He had another good DFS performance. This is 2 out of the last 3 weeks now where he was targeted over 7 times. And then last week it was 2 times. I think he's a deep waiver guy. I wouldn't put him out of the realm of possibility, but I'd watch to see if Kayshon Boutte was out. Kyle Williams is not on my market, didn't get enough targets. And if Jackson Dart is playing and Darius Slayton is hurt, I saw him go down last week. That's a tough one too. But I think your usual guys, your usual suspects are in the waiver in the wide receiver pool. Your Mac Hollins is, your Jerry Jeudy's, your Tez Johnsons. I prefer Tez and Mac Hollins. Running backs, there's probably not anybody on your waiver wire right now in terms of running backs, so you don't even have to worry about that. And I think that's kind of where I'd be at. RJ Harvey would be the one that I would prioritize. I would check to see if Chris Rodriguez's injury, because he did injure his shoulder, but he looks to have overtaken in certain capacities Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Whether that's worth it or not, you have to be the judge of that. And then I think that's it. I think that's where I'd be at, Joe. How about you?
No, that's a pretty good list of the waiver options to have out there and who to target. We don't need to keep adding to for the deep dive or for the
and then Joe, kicker comment more so. Eddie Pinheiro got out. You know, you're looking at Eddie, fast Eddie there, and he went 2 for 3 on extra points. You can't miss extra points. So while I do think
that's it, done.
I do think Eddie Pinheiro is great. Fun fact, guys, remember when after a missed extra point, missed field goal, and negative points from Cam Little, I told you I was going to drop Cam Little. I dropped Cam Little. 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, he kicks, the longest field goal in NFL history. So kickers are variants to the max, and they really are dependent upon game script. There's going to be better game scripts for Pinheiro eventually. I think it's okay if you want to drop him. Jason Myers is a good one from Seattle. But again, there's so much variance on a week-to-week basis with a lot of these guys. So just keep your head on a swivel for that. Rolling with the Pats defense this week, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that at all. When we look at the Patriots are a team that, you can score on in certain capacities, but they play the New York Jets on a short week. I tend to favor the Patriots there. But if Justin Fields isn't playing, Tyrod Taylor could get to the Patriots. So I'm very curious to see who they're going to end up starting in that matchup. Do I start Jaylen Warren this week or Chase Brown against each other this week? Or would you only play one of the two? I think it's fair to start both.
Yeah, I do. Especially Warren. Rodgers is getting called out in Pittsburgh, and he pretty much has to hand the ball off. And they're getting a lot of reasonable call-outs. For instance, they only run the ball to the right side, and they only do it when they put an extra offensive lineman on the field. It's a very predictable offense, and I do think that Warren will benefit from it. I also, after they get embarrassed on a night game, they always blow out the next team. And that's another reason to lean on Warren. Game script could easily take Chase Brown out of this one, and Cincinnati just chucks it everywhere.
Well, with Samaje Perine hurt, I do think Chase Brown continues to stay relevant to a higher degree. And I think that when we look at this from just the standpoint of, Steelers Bengals, we've seen this matchup before. The last time we saw this matchup, we had the Steelers lose to the Bengals 33-31. Jaylen Warren had 127 yards and Chase Brown had 108 yards. There's no reason for that to change. I think that both of those players are going to have a good week. Maybe they don't both get 100 yards, but I think 80 yards like 80 to 100 yards total for both of those guys, so somewhere in the 10-point category as a base starting point, and then your receptions and possible touchdowns to go from there. There's a likelihood that both of those running backs could score 16 points this week. But we can take a look at the metrics and stats a little bit on Thursday, but I think it's safe to put both of them. Josh, need 30 piece from Saquon tonight. It's within his realm of outcomes. It's within the range of outcomes.
I need 30 from Hurts, so let's hope he throws it to him.
So smooth. I love Judkins, and you're not going to get me to not like him in terms of a football player mentality. But when I look at what the Rams are doing, and they're just scoring. I mean, the Rams are just – Devontae Adams got hurt this past week. So if he's hurt and out for a longer period of time, that takes out one of the threats at red zone targets that was eating into the Kyren Williams bus.
It does. So, although they're starting to throw the ball at tight ends, it's weird.
Well, they use their tight ends a lot. So, I mean, like, their tight ends were on the field. Like, all the tight ends got usage this game. They ran a lot. But what was encouraging was that Kyren Williams was on the field 40 snaps out of the total of 68 snaps that Matthew Stafford played. He ran 19 routes and carried the ball 14 times. Corum carried the ball 13 times, but saw less routes. So, yes, it's something to kind of be aware of.
But Judkins has no competition. That's the trade-off there. It's a good question. They're fairly even. Yeah. I would personally go with Judkins.
Yeah, I think if you want,
Door's going to hit that field for Cleveland, and Judkins will definitely be the only weapon out there.
I think if you want touchdown equity, a higher touchdown equity, it's going to be Kyren. But if you want the volume, it would be Judkins. So
you want consistency, is Judkins. So and I value consistency out of
that. But Judkins is going to consistently get you like 8 points, which is a problem.
Judkins is solid. I mean, I'd rather go with Judkins.
Kyren will pop off. And let me just say this, though, that even in that snap share that they currently were in, I actually think that it's not as damaging. Like, yes, Kyren can have like bad games, but why I think it's actually pretty good for Kyren is that, he can run the ball 25 times. That's absolutely something that can happen. But last week, he got 2 touchdowns, 73 yards. So they're using him in the capacity that he's built for. We know he isn't the most efficient runner, but he's built for the goal line. He's built for that. And yeah, Corum gets a couple of snaps there, every now and again. But what I'm looking at is it's still a good play for Kyren, right? So Corum is a waiver wire target, like we talked about for everybody, but both of these guys are great. And Kyren has more touchdown equity. Judkins has more volume. Do I trade Kyren Williams and Tyler Warren for Bijan?
I think you're paying too much for Bijan. You get more back.
What you're seeing from Kyren as a floor is what Bijan's floor is right now. And Bijan is in the same situation as Kyren. Okay. It sucks to say it, but he's in the same situation where a backfield that doesn't need to really be split is being split. But one of the things that's interesting about Bijan, and one of the things that I think is lost in the noise of what happened this week, is that he was used as a wide receiver the majority of the time he was on the field because of whatever's going on with Darnell Mooney, whatever's going on with their other wide receivers. He was not used as the running back. So the problem with Bijan is that he is a high-level running back that's not being used at that position. He's being used at wide receiver. He's being split out at wide receiver. And so when you take those opportunities away from him, yeah, he has a good chance to have a great game. But if you're giving, because they trust Tyler Algier, if you can have Tyler Algier and Bijan on the field at the same time, but you're giving Tyler Algier the looks because you're not going to split them out wide, that's a big problem if you're moving into Bijan right now. He's going to get opportunities, but that's a big problem. Would I want to trade Kyren and Tyler Warren? Tyler Warren is elite. He's one of the players that I ended up trading in to get Lamar, and he's going to have great games. He's going to have down games too. If you want to buy Bijan, I'm not going to tell you shouldn't, but there are things to worry about with Bijan, and that this trade is more even than you think. I would tend to lean on the Kyren and Tyler Warren side, but if you can get Juwan Johnson on your team, then yeah.
You have to be more than Bijan. That's the fundamental answer. So, family, your question there about if you're playing a tight end from the same team, running back from the same team, it's a very little correlation. It's a way to vulture more touchdowns from the same roster. Burrow or Stafford rest of the year, it's definitely Stafford. Burrow's not playing for at least 3 more weeks. So,
yeah.
But that being said, I would spend money to acquire Burrow.
So I want to touch this question real quick, but before we go to Dante here, is that when you look at correlations, when you look at correlations, right? The highest correlation is that when you think a team is going to score a lot, it makes sense to have as many pieces as you can from that game or from that matchup. So, for example, if I thought that this week that this Rams game is going to pop off, that this Rams-Seahawks game is going to pop off, and I thought it was going to happen in the pass-catching debate, then Tyler Higbee, Colby Parkinson are well within my purview of players that I am considering to start, even if I am starting Kyron Williams, because there's a chance that in a high-scoring matchup, both the tight end and the running back do well. So to me, there is positive correlation. And metrically, that might not be the case all the time, but from a kind of conversational standpoint, right? The correlation is that if your team is going to score, there's a very high chance that in the red zone, these tight ends and these running backs are going to get utilized. For some teams, that's not always the case, but for the tight ends we mentioned, it's true. Got to ride Ferg no matter what, Donta. Yeah, I mean, I think Ferg has earned that respect at this point in time this year. How do we feel about Devonta Smith tonight? I already won by 3, but need some more points to take over first place, 7-3. So, Donta, I feel great about Devonta Smith.
He's going to go off, dude.
Joe feels even better about Devonta Smith tonight. And when we look at what Devonta Smith's projections are, he's conservatively being projected at 13 points with a ceiling of 25 points. And what we see from Devonta Smith over the last several weeks, he has not had a game under 5 targets in the last 4 weeks. And that, I think, is a good sign for him.
Great sign. It's past A.J. Brown.
And this goes back to what we talked about with quarterbacks in general. Goff is hanging around on his waivers, but after him, it's a decent drop off. But if I can get Goff at least, I'd be totally fine giving up Hurts. Yeah. I mean, Goff hasn't been playing tremendously, but 16 points from Goff and getting back those points in a running back is better than just having them, because your team needs points. Your team needs points.
This is why I argue for the elite one, because you're not getting 10 points back on the trade.
Yeah. And I appreciate the shout out there, CC, because, Dart had a great game. Dart was a top 5 option this week on DFS slates. And even if Hurts gets there, even if Hurts gets to 26 points, you weren't mad starting Jackson Dart. We talked about that crazily. Right. And he did it in 3 quarters, which is nice. Adam, I'm 6-3, but I lost this week. Rashad White is killing me. We were not on Rashad this week. He is not performing to the capability that you expected him to, but also Sean Tucker has gotten more looks. So if you want a back end crazy waiver wire ad for everybody that's in the chat right now, Sean Tucker is worth taking a chance on right now. I'd still
rather have Corum, but I get where you're at, Bob.
Yeah, I would rather have Corum too. But if Corum's already taken and you're looking for a guy to help you out in the short term, especially considering Bucky's injury, he got 9 carries last week, 12 carries the week before, and in getting a couple of targets. So they know that Bucky's important to them, and that's why they're holding him out as much as they are, because these 2 running backs aren't the answer. That's why they went out and got Bucky.
Win the Super Bowl.
Who would you package Bucky and Rashad White for? My running backs are Sharbs, Genty, Kamara, and Rashad White, Bucky. I'd like a running back upgrade. My wide receiver room is thin but gold. Amon-Ra, Rice, Jason Jennings. That's not thin at all. That's great. What I'm looking at here is, if I'm looking at a running back, I think that Sharbs and Genty is very volatile. Kamara, very volatile as well. If I'm looking to upgrade and I want to move Bucky and Rashad White, unfortunately, you are looking at the tier like right under Breece Hall. You may still be able to get Judkins. You might still be able to get Judkins. Maybe. If depending on where that player is at in terms of their record, there's a good chance that people are going to be fed up with Quinshon Judkins' fantasy points and aren't looking at the volume. Like, let's just break this down, right? Is that over the last 4 weeks, in a losing effort against the Steelers, he got 12 carries. In a winning effort against Miami, he got 25 carries. In a losing effort against New England, he got 9 carries and 3 targets. And in a losing effort against the Jets, he got 22 carries. And that New England game was when he got hurt. So he's back to 22 carries plus 3 targets. That's 25 opportunities. So the numbers aren't really like matching what we are expecting. But if I'm fed up with Rashad White, and Rashad White can still get points, it was a bad matchup for Rashad White this past week. If Rashad White and Bucky, if I'm moving off of them and I want to move into something, again, I think that Judkins is a perfect example of a guy that you can get right now. And his situation is not going to change much. I mean, they're bringing in Dylan Sampson on third downs. He's getting the majority of the early down work. How valuable is that? I think you just have to make the case for it that it's not super valuable unless they get into the red zone. But he has matches against the Ravens, the Raiders, the Niners, the Titans, and the Bears. So if you are in contention, like you are, Adam, for a playoff spot, even if you wanted to trade Sharps and Rachaad White and keep Bucky and say, I want to go after Judkins, see what you can do. That's the guy I would target. Who would you target, Joe?
Oh, dude, you're not going to talk me out of Judkins. I love that guy. I'm totally on board with Judkins.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, answer your next question here. For Amar CD for the rest of the season, for me, this is Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit all day. One major primary reason why. The two of them are essentially equal, but when the Cowboys start losing, they bench people hard. When Detroit starts losing, they go for it on fourth down. Amon is going to be in more positions to put up points, despite the fact that Dallas is also going to put up points. I'm just more comfortable on the higher floor of Amon-Ra, and I think both their ceilings are incredibly high. So I would go with Amon.
And I mean, that's a fair assumption to make too. But one of the things is like,
that's not an assumption, that's history.
No. What I'm saying is that with Amon-Ra St. Brown is that we have not been getting the high touchdown numbers over the last several weeks for Amon-Ra, which has really kind of neutered the overall upside of him. So like going back to week 2 when they played the Bears, he had 42 points. He caught 3 touchdowns. From that point in time, his next best game was a 26-pointer where he caught 2 touchdowns. Other than that, right, he's had games of 100 yards, 45 yards, 86 yards, 97 yards, 58 yards. So nothing really that's like crazy monstrous as he can do. But when you look at what the Lions schedule is upcoming, these are going to be matchups where they're going to utilize Amon-Ra St. Brown. Let's listen. Eagles, Giants, Packers, Cowboys, Rams, Steelers. They are going to utilize Amon-Ra St. Brown to win those games. And by the way, they played Dallas, which really, we don't know if they've improved. They went out and got 2 pieces of the defense. We don't know how much that's improved the defense in 1 week. But Amon-Ra St. Brown has a great schedule for wide receivers, especially because of the way they utilize and deploy Amon-Ra St. Brown, that he's not really always on any one side of the field. Now, like Joe said about the Dallas Cowboys schedule, is that there's also some games there where, you know, they're going to have to continue to stay competitive in, right? Raiders, Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Vikings, Chargers. I like both. I give a slight edge to CeeDee Lamb though, because of the way that that Detroit will utilize their running backs, where we know where Javonte Williams has his value. Gibbs can kill you from any part of the field, and Montgomery can kill you from the short field. So for me, Lamb has a slight edge in those numbers, because I do think that they can hyper target. They can hyper target Lamb if they needed to win a game. And 12 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets. And before his injury, he had 11 targets and 13 targets. So I don't see that changing much. I like both, but I give a slight edge to CeeDee Lamb at this point in time in the year. Jesse, well, let's wrap up with Jesse's questions and Josh's deep dive. We appreciate everybody in the chat joining us today. Who would you guys want if you traded Rashee Rice?
Amon, CD. That's the category I'm shopping in.
This is
Chase,
If I'm trading Rice, and I don't care if I get a wide receiver back, then I want a top flight running back. If I'm trading away Rashee Rice, and let's say I'm looking in the I'm looking at the running back list, right?
Like, I'm not even sure Cook's cutting the bill right now. Like, it's JT or Gibbs. That's the only two I could discuss.
If I'm trading Rice, I'm trading him into Josh Jacobs. I think that's a fair deal, right?
Oh, I think you need more than Jacobs. I am so high on Rice. I'm not big on him for the playoff push. I'm high on him for right now.
Like if I could get if for Rashee Rice, if I could get Josh Jacobs and let's say Waddle or Josh Jacobs, Alec Pierce, like if I'm trying to get volume, if I could get Josh Jacob, Alec Pierce, and like Olave or Wan'Dale Robinson, I think that would be fair too. Like if I'm going for volume. Josh Jacobs for me is the running back for you that if I have Rice and I want to trade him away, that's kind of the running back market that I'd be in. And let's say you wanted to go after like a Chase Brown. I think you have Chase Brown, but like Javonte Williams is another one. Rashee Rice for Javonte Williams and like an Alec Pierce, I think would be fine for me. I don't like trading Rice, but also like if I'm trading him straight up for a wide receiver, there's no wide receiver that I would really consider outside of CD, JSN, Puka, and Jamar. So like that's just kind of like a framework to kind of look at that. Like if you trade it for a running back, I think you're going to get more value than if you trade it for a wide receiver. Like a straight up deal wide receiver straight through to wide receiver is probably not going to give you as much value. But a deal from a wide receiver and a running back is probably going to be, you're going to be able to make up the value with a lower end wide receiver. So Joe, I think if he was looking for a running back, who would you trade Rice for if you're looking at a running back?
Gibbs. Yeah.
I mean, that's
wild. I think that's realistically the only way you're going to get, because you're not going to get JT. I'm very big on Rice right now. And I believe that you should trade him before the playoff push and their schedule gets weird with starting with that Black Friday game. But he has so much potential between to and fro, and you should be able to capitalize on both the name and the production.
Yeah. And as it goes here to this question, I really do think, and we started the show at the top of the show talking about how Parker Washington does have his place on teams. The thing that worries me about Parker Washington is the imminent return of Brenton Strange. And where we see Parker Washington getting the majority of snaps is in the slot. And there's a chance that Brenton Strange can work his way back into a role to take over some of those opportunities. Then you have the potential upcoming return in a couple of weeks or so of BTJ. Now, Parker Washington didn't have an elite target game, but he had that return touchdown and he had another touchdown as well. 6 total opportunities in a weird game for the Jaguars where they didn't really pass the ball a whole lot. And you look at it and you say, okay, well, Tim Patrick, Jacoby Myers, Diami Brown, he's very clearly above Diami Brown in terms of Trevor Lawrence's pecking order. And Jacoby Myers will get used to it. But I think he does have a role. And if the Jacksonville Jaguars even if the Jacksonville Jaguars are behind in matchups, Parker Washington will probably be utilized more. So Chargers, Cardinals, Titans, Colts, Jets, those are all really good matchups that I would tend in this instance in time to lean Jesse further into Parker Washington than the other two, because all things being the same, I think that Judy and Coleman are very much profile as the same player from just a work standpoint here. But Coleman's on the better offense. So you kind of lean him a little bit.
Coleman, no doubt, this entire conversation.
But I do like Parker Washington's, especially if he's getting opportunities in the return game. I think that that's interesting enough. But I do worry about the return of Brenton Strange. So with all that considered, if you like that Dalton Kincaid is injured and you like that James Cook is hurt, it's Coleman. But if you want to lean a little bit into Parker Washington, knowing that Brenton Strange's return and BTJ's return are going to mud up those. That's why I say don't spend a lot of fab on Parker Washington, because it's going to start to get muddied really soon. And I don't know if that opens up a lot of opportunities for him. Jason, will you trade Tet for Hall? He just lost Wilson, or Marvin Harrison, Waddle, Ladd, Zay, DK, Sutton. So if I can trade Tet in the Breece Hall, I think we gave you all the reasons why Breece Hall is a sell. Why are the reasons Breece Hall is a hold? In this instance in time, knowing your team, Jason, I'm just going back up to your team right here for the one that has Ted on it because you have a couple of teams here. Knowing that on your one team, Ted is your wide receiver 3, and you can slot in you can slot in Shakir there, and then you still have Vidal there. I think that Tet for Hall is fair. It upgrades your flex without you're starting Shakir on a weekly basis, and that's cool. In your other league where you have Tet here, I'd absolutely want Breece Hall here for this team that I can, I have some juice and motivation on the backside. I think that Tet and Breece, they're on offenses that similarly stifle their potential. But Breece Hall has the chance to really.
Breece Hall is much better upside than Ted. So, yeah, I would do that.
I would do that. If I could trade Tet into that, I would absolutely do something like that. But if I could trade Tet into Waddle and straight up, yeah. Like I like
that's highway robbery.
Like if I could trade Tet straight up into Waddle or straight up into Ladd or straight up into Marv, I'd try all 4 of them, right? Tet for Hall, Tet for Marv, Tet for Waddle, Tet for Ladd. See which one hits. I think you won't be disappointed.
For Ladd or Waddle, that's highway robbery, man.
Also, how about Pickens? Just seeing who I can go for this week. I don't think you can trade Tet into. So here's the thing. Tet in the Hall, I think you can do. Tet and Harrison, I think you're going to have to give a little bit more. Tet and Waddle, you're going to have to definitely give more. Tet and Ladd, you're also going to have to get more. Tet and Zay is an even trade. I don't want DK, and I don't want Sutton.
You don't want Sutton either.
So if I'm going after Hall, I think it's fair, even to even, apples to apples. Marv, I think you're going to have to add a little bit more with the Brissett, and Waddle, you're going to have to add at least a player or 2 more. Tet and Pollard, maybe for Waddle. They might consider it. Pickens, I think, is untouchable. I think that he is one of those guys that is in that Waddle category, but a little bit higher.
Rotting and dying with Pickens.
You're welcome, Jesse. We appreciate you being here with us and enjoying your Monday afternoon, even though it's pitch black outside right now where we live.
Yes, it is.
Josh, we're going to finish up with your deep dive and any other questions that might come in. Jason, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Hit like, follow, subscribe for anybody who hasn't yet.
Right, and that PayPal link.
Deep dive, 10-team PPR. May, Lamb, Rice, Igbuka. You couldn't ask for a better wide receiving core. Barkley, Henderson as your running backs. Tyler Warren as your tight end. Woody Marks as your flex. The bench is Tez Johnson, Trey Tucker, Monungai, JCM, Golden, Bigsby, BTJ. The IR is Ridley and Hampton. Any moves to make this squad the best it could be. So where you're really hurting at right now is that second running back spot.
Yes, now, you are.
With the ascension
Unless Henderson's a dude.
With the potential ascension of Travion Henderson and the potential ascension here, like I said earlier, of Woody Marks, you're not hurting as much.
And then the looming return of Hampton fixes it all.
The looming return of Hampton does tend to get you into a better position right now. If one of those wide receivers were to go down, you're in a little bit of trouble. But I think with BTJ, all things considered, that's, if he comes back and he's healthy, that's a great spot to be in. Personally speaking, I don't think there is much to do with your team right now. I think that a lot of these
Josh,
guys
we'd have to rip the whole thing apart and basically rebuild it because it's already in good shape.
The kicker here is that, like I said last week to some people, JCM feels like a drop. Then Chris Rodriguez goes and gets himself hurt. JCM could potentially be back on the menu. But the problem is that they're only using JCM when Washington is winning. And Washington isn't winning a lot. So that's a very big problem for JCM. We told Jesse, Trey Tucker is an interesting one, right? Trey Tucker feels like a drop right now, depending on your lineup. For your lineup, there's no reason
to going crazy, and then you're moving him.
Yeah, there's no reason to drop him in your lineup.
You have some people on your bench you absolutely cannot move. You cannot get rid of Bigsby because he is your insurance for Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
I would not get rid of BTJ or Golden because they're your injury insurance.
Well, Golden's
I want to get rid of Monungai. Yeah, he is too. I wouldn't get rid of Monangai because he's basically Henderson. Just which week are we talking about? And I think I think both their roles are certainly going to grow. So
Or
when
if
I
not
look at
change.
this, yeah, I think that your team hits a different level if Hampton comes back to what Hampton was. Because effectively, he's in your flex. And then your team is pretty much unbeatable. So because you're so stacked with those three receivers plus Saquon, I wouldn't really want to be messing with anything. I mean, the only thing you really could do, and this is a dealer's choice question, is you could say, hey, I'm concerned about Saquon's injury history. I'm going to package Saquon and BTJ and see if I can talk him into JTT. That's the only thing you really could do that could tangibly change this team.
I was going to say
and
something
be a worthwhile
similar,
conversation.
Joe. I was going to say something similar because you don't sound like 1,000%, Josh, confident with your running back room. So in order to get a better running back, you are going to have to trade one of your very good wide receivers. And if you wanted to, you can take a slight downgrade to one of those wide receivers while still getting a modest value in return. For example.
And Rice would be the one I would trade because I think he's at his peak.
For example, we were talking about earlier in the show, just a couple, 10 minutes ago or so, about what I would trade Rashee Rice for, right? And if I could trade Rice for your team, right, into Jacobs and another wide receiver so that I could solidify
now and,
then ultimately make a decision about
Pickens, I would do.
Right? If I could do something like that, I would absolutely do that. And if they wanted me to pair Monangai or JCM or Woody Marks or Henderson up with Rice to get something better, you could do that. Now, I'm not going to say to trade CeeDee Lamb, but he is the asset that you have that has one of the highest values, not named Emeka Egbuka and Rashee Rice, right? So, like, if you say, I want to trade CeeDee Lamb, you're going to get back a fair comparable value for CeeDee Lamb. Like can do probably like Derrick Henry level of running back and a Jalen Waddle wide receiver or better for CeeDee Lamb. So like that's just because of how people value CeeDee Lamb. So you can, if you want to make, I'm saying you don't have to make a move.
That's what you also shouldn't. I would only accept trades if you're getting your doors blown off.
That's officially what I'm saying. But if you absolutely did not like having Henderson and Marks in your starting lineup because of their volatility on a week-to-week basis, and you prefer to have something less volatile, just know you could probably move Lamb and Rice for a top 10 running back still, and then a top 24 wide receiver at the very minimum. And if that makes you more confident with your team, I don't see a reason not to do that. Then you could potentially move off of Golden, and then hopefully when BTJ comes back, you just slot BTJ back in your lineup as if you didn't miss a beat. So I think that could really change the framework of your team. Guys that I'm looking at, right? Javonte Williams, if I'm looking at running backs, but definitely Josh Jacobs. I can't say enough about Josh Jacobs. So
again, guys, you pair it with another Jacobs and Waddle. I could understand that type of move for or better.
Something like that would be good. All right, guys. We'll see you again Thursday, 3:45 Eastern Standard Time. Please bring your questions, comments. We are Local Football Flavor. We appreciate everybody here today. Like, follow, subscribe, and we'll be with you on Thursday. Appreciate it.